When my grandfather was young, he spent a lot of time just roaming the woods through Pennsylvania, especially, but basically the northeastern states. And he would tell me some of the stories that happened to him. Some were little tiny stories that just were more comments than anything. But one that he would tell is that in Pennsylvania, in this one area in the mountains of Pennsylvania, there was a river that had these huge flat rocks that were above the surface of the water quite a ways. And they were big enough that a person could easily sleep on them without rolling off. And when I was a little girl, I had the hardest time figuring that out. And it just seemed so strange to me that there'd be rocks that were so big and so flat that you could sleep on them. And he told about this one place where he went, where there was a railroad tracks along the river, and there was a water tank where the steam engines would get their water. And the water tank was right by the tracks and the river. And so that I could kind of visualize, but those flat rocks that were down in the river, that was just something that was beyond my comprehension. Well, I grew up and got married, and we moved to Pennsylvania, Ron and I, and we lived in a little town called Tank, Pennsylvania. Well, it wasn't really a town. There were 5 houses. There were 4 houses by the river, and where the river came from the mountains, then made a curve and went by our house. And there was a field with some horses, and then the mountains again. So it was kind of a little valley there. And one day as we were walking, we walked over this bridge there by the 4 houses. And we noticed that there had been a railroad track right next to the river. And there was an old broken down water tank there that had been used to put water in the steam engines. And I looked down in the river, and there, sticking up from the river quite high, were these huge flat rocks that were big enough for a man to sleep on without falling off. They were circular and very flat, and probably were about, I would say, 8 feet in diameter. And suddenly that story came back to my mind that my grandfather had talked about being in a place where the rocks were large and flat, where he would sleep to keep the mountain lions and other critters away, and that it was by a railroad tracks with a water tank. And I knew then my grandfather had been in that very spot and had slept on those very rocks that he had described to me so many years before. And that was just a thrilling thing for me to be able to see where my grandfather had actually been and had actually slept there. So I thought I'd share it with you.